guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisa, and thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for your patience once again. It has been mental. I've had 2 poorly children. I was ill myself. I've had so many workmen in, so it's like I've never it's just been hectic, to say the least. So today, while the house is quiet, everybody's out, I am going to do Return of the Gods, the next chapter. I am recording from my phone, so I do apologise if the screen seems a little bit smaller, but I just don't want everybody to come back and, you know, I'm filming and we have all that. It's just a waste of time. So we are going to upstairs where it's nice and quiet, and then if anyone comes back, they'll either think I'm talking to myself and I've lost my mind or I'm filming. So thank you so much for being so patient, and welcome to any new subscribers or new people visiting the channel. I truly appreciate you, and I am so grateful that you would choose to spend your time listening to anything I've got to say. So I really appreciate that. So the next chapter, if you haven't read or listened to any of the other ones, they're all on the channel, guys. Go and have a look if you want to. This one is called The Transformer. This is the next chapter installment of this book, and I think the chapters are only small, but we'll see as we go along, and if they are, I normally fit 2 in. So there was another side to Ishtar, another nature, another power, and another agenda, and it would be from this, her other side, that the transformation of American and world culture would be taken to a new stage and a new level. And from this, new movements would spring forth that would alter the face of Western civilization beyond recognition. We will now remove a veil to uncover an ancient mystery that lies behind the forces, movements, events, and phenomena that are at this moment touching and transforming virtually every facet of modern culture. And yet the mystery goes back thousands of years to the clay tablets of ancient Sumer. Something about Ishtar. Ishtar was a sorceress. She was known for her powers to alter people's affections, passions, thoughts, and at times their essence. We're now about to see how, as a sorceress, she would alter more than human relationships and institutions in the modern world, something even deeper. If the sexual revolution was the first of her renewed works, this would be her second. The second, though, connected to the first, would open up a different realm. It would alter human desire, human identity, and human nature itself. The transformation would follow after the goddess's own nature. There was something different about Ishtar. I am a woman, I am a man. In her link to the planet Venus, she was known as the morning star, but also the evening star. In this was a clue into her nature, duality. She would inhabit the 2 ends and polar opposites of the spectrum. She was on one hand the goddess of love, beauty, allurement, feminine sexuality, but on the other hand she embodied and personified ferocity, aggressiveness, violence, battle, war, and destruction, characteristics and element typically associated with masculinity. On one hand she was shown as a naked woman in jewels, the goddess of sexuality, but on the other, an armoured fighter, a symbol of war. She was in one entity the embodiment of male and female. Ishtar's connection to both femininity and masculinity were more than an illusion or metaphor. An ancient Mesopotamian tablet records the goddess saying these words: "When I sit in the alehouse, I am a woman, and I am an exuberant young man." Another ancient writing records her saying this: "Though I am a woman, I am a noble young man." The core and operative words in such statement are these: I am a woman, I am a man. Also, guys, it just said, this is my side note, she was, on one hand, she was shown as a naked woman in jewels. How many of these stars or A-listers or whatever you want to call them, or take pictures or put pictures out of them with naked, covered in jewels? Just saying. Right, to turn a man into a woman. The joining of masculine and feminine in one being was in many ways what Ishtar was all about. It was her nature to cross lines, transgress boundaries, break conventions, blur distinctions, and merge opposites to confuse and invert. It was not her nature to accept reality as it was. It was her nature to bend it, transform it, conform it to her will and desire. If her will was to be a woman, she would be a woman. But if it was to be a man, she would become a man. She was the goddess of transmutation and metamorphosis. Her nature was to alter nature, and most specifically the nature of male and female, man and woman. An ancient Sumerian hymn reveals her power. It was to turn a man into a woman and a woman into a man, to change one into the other. She had the ability to turn male into female and female into male, to blur and bend and merge and invert the two. The transformer returns. So what would happen if the goddess and that power came into the modern world? What would happen is what has already happened and is now happening. It would mean that there would be another transformation, a deeper and further work, and because of that we would not expect it to dramatically manifest at the beginning of the sexual revolution, but later on. And so it would. It would take the sexual revolution to a deeper stage, to its logical conclusions, and to another realm. It would appear as something new, a new movement, a new dynamic to penetrate and transform American and Western culture. But behind it all was an ancient principality that was said to possess the power to transform human nature and reality. The Transformer's blueprint. Upon its return to the world, the ancient spirit was set out to accomplish its mission. It would seek to alter the definition of male and female. It would move to blur the lines and nullify the distinctions between the two. It would act to transform the nature of man and woman, and it would seek to feminize all that was male and masculinize all that was female. It would attempt to turn man into woman and woman into man. It would war against the sanctity of sexuality and gender by confusing the two and merging the one into the other and the other into one. And by doing so, seek to nullify them. It would appear first at the fringes of society, where Ishtar was known to have dwelled. But then it would come into mainstream and begin permeating every part of culture, leaving almost no facet of life untouched. It would usher in the next stage of America's paganization, and it would become the chief hammerhead to smash the biblical foundations of Western civilization. We will now open up the goddess's deeper work and darker magic. We will see how she cast her spell and altered a civilization and human nature. It would begin with the spell she cast and the transformation she set in motion concerning her own kind. The metamorphosis of women. So guys, I'm going to go ahead and read that next chapter in this video, called The Metamorphosis of Women. The goddess would inaugurate the metamorphosis and deconstruction of women. The masculine goddess. It came from her own nature, though some of her qualities were linked to femininity, especially in the sexual realm. Other traditionally feminine qualities were missing, particularly that linked to nurturing, empathy, gentleness and compassion. They seemed foreign to her. She was not a caregiver, and there was almost nothing maternal about her. Her temperament was, in many ways, more characterised by attributes commonly associated with masculinity. She was a fighter. She was assertive, aggressive, dominant, combative, competitive, courageous, fierce, strong, independent, violent, brave and ferocious. And it was her nature and power to make others in her image, and thus to turn a woman into a man. The masculinization of women. So we would expect then that as the spirit of Ishtar took hold of American and Western culture, there would begin a transformation of women, a morphing of their identities, functioning in nature. And that is exactly what happened. The goddess would seek to defeminize women, to masculinize them, to share her nature. To do that, she would have to destroy or weaken the male-female paradigm. She would have to separate woman from man and man from woman. Ishtar in the workplace. Ishtar has been referred to as an independent woman due to the fact that in the end she's never bound to any one man, and as one associated with prostitution. She was economically self-supporting, so at the same time the sexual revolution was taking hold. There was a growing movement calling for women to become like Ishtar, economically independent of men. Millions of women left their homes to join the workforce. The decline of marriage only furthered the trend. Divorce did increase in a number of women without husbands, many of them single mothers. They now had to replace the functions of the missing husband and take on the traditionally male roles of provider and protector. Women were increasingly told to seek meaning and fulfillment not in marriage or motherhood or family, but in the workplace. Transformed into her image. But function and role affect identity and even nature. The identity and nature of women began changing. Women were encouraged and instructed to become aggressive, competitive, dominant and fierce. Girls were now trained from early childhood to reject typically feminine pursuits. They were bombarded with messages about girl power and fierceness, just as the goddess was fierce and powerful. As Ishtar took masculine roles and characteristics, so women were impelled to do likewise, to assume traditional masculine functions. work attributes and roles. The new Zeitgeist, or spirit of the age, belonged to Ishtar, and it was causing women step by step to be transformed into her image. Rage of the goddess. Ishtar was bent on breaking conventions. She eschewed traditionally feminine roles and instead competed with men, fighting with them, defying them, and dominating them. So at the same time, the spirit of Ishtar was setting in motion the sexual revolution. Another movement was birthed, feminism, or second wave feminism. It would be infused from its beginning with the spirit of the goddess. It would thus also set out to break societal conventions, wage war against the concept of femininity, and defy male authority. As Ishtar was given to rage, so a spirit of rage against men became prevalent in American and Western culture, especially within the ranks of radical feminism. Against the patriarchy. The god Anu was the chief deity of the Mesopotamian pantheon. He was Ishtar's father. Ishtar would typically challenge his authority and seek to overrule it. The Latin word for father is pater. From pater we get the word patriarchy, or the ruling fathers. So the spirit of Ishtar indwelled radical feminism, set itself against what is called the patriarchy. The patriarchy had to be defied and overthrown. Rise of the warrior women. But not only was Ishtar combative, she was a warrior. The Sumerian poem Inanna and Ibaya, I don't know, describes the goddess in her ferocity as she enters into battle. Goddess of the fearsome divine powers, clad in terror, riding on the great divine powers, Inanna, drenched in blood, rushing around in great battles. You destroy mighty hands with arrow and strength and overpower lands. Thus, as the spirit of Ishtar began taking hold of American and Western culture, women now began taking on the identities and roles of fighters and warriors. The spirit of the military goddess was manifest in the militarization of women. It was what had been written in ancient times of the goddess's powers and acts, as is inscribed in ancient tablets. She was at work to put spindles into the hands of men and to give weapons to the women. So the warrior women became part of popular culture and entertainment, where physical combat had once been the domain of men. Women were now increasingly depicted in fiction as bearing supernatural powers to war and wreak destruction. It was all in keeping with the mythology of the ancient warrior goddess. The militarized goddess. Ishtar entered into the battlefield fully armoured and weaponized. It was in her nature, skill, and power to wage war. She was militarized goddess, so upon her return, not only would she revive the image, fantasy, and narrative of the warrior goddess, she would bring about the militarization of women. In other words, the warrior woman would manifest as well in real life. It was a phenomenon that was largely unprecedented. For most of human history, the entry of women into military combat. The precedent, though, could be found in mythology. The goddess's myths were now becoming reality. It was another manifestation of women being conformed into the goddess's image, and it was also another step in the divorcing of man and woman, male and female. The more women could resemble men or replicate their functions, as less they would need them. Women were now to be their own protectors and defenders, and so this too could feed into the goddess's destruction of marriage. The bond that held men and women together was progressively deteriorating. Whom Ishtar deprived. It was no accident that marriage and family was being continually devalued, the workplace continually glorified, and sexual promiscuity or any sexuality devoid of marriage continually celebrated. Having been indoctrinated into the cult of self and self-fulfillment, both men and women were now more reluctant to enter into marriage and less able to maintain it. Both men and women were now more likely to end up alone. So an ancient Mesopotamian text speaks of the women, whom Ishtar deprived of husbands. Ishtar had promised the liberation of women, and yet studies into the state of women's well-being revealed that since the beginning of transformation, they had instead grown progressively unhappier. They were now less likely to be married, more likely to be in the workplace, less likely to be fulfilled, and more likely to be alone. And yet, even in this, they'd been unwittingly conformed to the image of a goddess. The goddess would not stop with women. If she was going to transform cultures, nations, and civilizations, she would have to transform men as well. We now move to her other spell and other transformations she began, the metamorphosis of men. So that will be the next chapter, guys, if you want to come back and watch that one soon. I mean, it's amazing, really, isn't it? Like the influence that this ancient goddess has on society today, with how things are. I mean, I've spoke on here many a times about how I was, you know, an independent woman and did my own thing, ran my own business, thought I had no need of a man. I was fed up of being hurt by men, but that's because I kept going with the wrong ones. So, you know, there wasn't godly men for a start. So, you know, these things happen. So you get into that mentality. But you can see, I mean, when I was growing up, I'm 40 this year. And when I was growing up, it was the Spice Girls and they was everywhere. But if you remember anything about them, it was all about girl power, women rule, the power of a woman, and, you know, brainwashing young girls, really. And it still happens today. I mean, like me now, those young girls are now grown women. That's what you was led to believe in growing up, you know. And it's funny because all of that, before that, I always wanted a little girl that wanted to have a husband, have children, and have that typical family life. So it's strange how culture and certain things you expose yourself to can actually have a detrimental effect on your life. And I suppose we should remember that going forward, about the influence that things can have on our lives, even today, the things we expose ourselves to. So yeah, I always find this book so interesting, and the how much you can actually see it going on in the world. But then knowledge is power. But then the Bible does say something about, is it with much wisdom comes much, is it like despair, or I can't think now. Yeah, so basically the more you know, the harder it is for you as well. But you know, it's a blessing to have the wisdom of the Lord and read the word and know these things, so you can look out on, you know, what not to get yourself involved in. But at the same time, it weighs heavy on you because you are aware of it. So it's like a double-edged sword. So yeah, it can weigh really heavy on you, and you just see more and more how messed up this world is, and that you've got to be faithful and function in here till the Lord comes for us, either at the rapture or our time on this earth is just through in any other way. So yes, guys, I hope you found some information from that to be helpful and use it in your walk with the Lord going forward, because I certainly do. I don't get it right all of the time, far from it. I'm still learning every day. But what a blessing it is that our salvation is not by works, because if it was, none of us would be saved, because we don't deserve it. It's only the work of the cross that the Lord did on that cross that gives us that. And funnily enough, today I actually I went to get my eyebrow shaped, and I witnessed to the lady who does my eyebrows. I'm not sure if she's Hindu, but she's an Indian lady, so I'm not sure. So I was telling her about, you know, basically my testimony of where I used to be, where I am now, and, you know, the Lord Jesus is the only way. So I pray what I said goes forward and bear fruit. But any opportunity you get, guys, to soul win, to spread the gospel, to bear your testimony, is a gift, and one we should use. So thank you anyway, guys, so much for listening. I really appreciate you. Honestly, I really do. I am trying my hardest to be here more, because it matters to me. It really does. But I'm just trying to go through a transitional period where I can manage this and my children and my husband, run a house, and some of the stuff that I've got going on. So I am trying very hard, and this is extremely important to me. So please bear with me. So thank you so much, guys, and I will see you all soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.